I was in the Capitol on January 6th. I was there to watch the peaceful transfer of power when we know all hell broke loose. What we thought was just people demonstrating turned out to be an angry mob. Found myself crawling around on the floor donning a gas mask. Now we have an obligation to find out what happened, who was involved, how that happened, who funded it. Who would not want that? But Marco Rubio voted against it because he obviously does not want to know the truth.
That was Congresswoman Val Demings hours after her announcement that she's in. She is running for the Florida Senate, not wasting any time either, going after the occupant of that seat, Marco Rubio. Demings last night making it abundantly clear she's not scared or daunted by the tough fight ahead, pointing out the hypocrisy of Rubio being in the Capitol on January 6th, first acknowledging that Trump did in fact bear some of the responsibility for that attack, then deciding he doesn't want to know anything else about what happened. Let's bring into our conversation Democratic strategist and MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. Jason's still here. Juanita, she's so important for so many reasons. Substantive, really, really powerful member of Congress who would make a great senator for that state. She's also making one of the most important arguments that the country's going to hear in the midterms, and that is that the Republican Party is a danger to our security. You think it's going to work?
I absolutely think it's going to dig up some ground in Florida. And this argument about the insurrection is going to only be compounded with the argument about COVID relief, which we know Marco Rubio also opposed, and really telling that personal story, telling these deep connections, that the impact of those decisions that he's making every time he cowers to Trump, every time he does not put people first, is going to be a cornerstone of her campaign. And I think that's going to resonate with voters because that is not distant history. That's just 6 months ago, Nicole. And I think coupling that story about the insurrection with the real impact that COVID had on these communities across Florida is going to be important, especially as we know Rubio is going to proactively try to throw the regular type of attacks at her as he has with other Democrats, calling her a socialist, calling her too liberal. But when she's a motorcycle riding former police chief who knows Florida well and is from Florida, that's not going to stick here. And I think she's going to continue to beat those drums, not only in her personal story, but also in her time on the Hill in this campaign trail.
Yeah, I mean, the Republican playbook in Florida is to tout the kind of messages, Jason, that Juanita just mentioned, to call someone a socialist. They're not going to work on her. And I also want to ask you to speak to, I banished on this show, this foregone conclusion about what's going to happen in the midterms. We have no idea what's going to happen. And if Val Demings makes that argument about the threat that Marco Rubio contributes to by not wanting to understand the threat of domestic violent extremism in our own country, you could see a repeat of the 2002 cycle where the threat of 9/11 was still on people's minds. What do you make of her opening interview there with my colleague Joy, and of this contest as it's shaping up?
Well, I will begin by saying this. I think Val Demings is a very good politician. And that's not something I can say about everybody who's in office. She was on my bingo card for a potential VP. She's a very good politician. She is commanding. She is interesting. She has a great personal story. She has gravitas, like actual gravitas. I've been in the room with her. So this is not going to be an issue of political weakness. But what we have to understand is the landscape of Florida itself. You are on this is like a tilted pool board at this particular point, and she's on the most slanted side. I mean, with DeSantis running that state, you can't trust where votes are going to come in. You can't trust what people are going to get access to. So in a neutral field, she'd probably be able to beat Marco Rubio. I would be willing, in a neutral field, I would be willing to make that prediction now. But it is not a neutral field. So what's going to happen is not only is she going to have to run a flawless campaign, which is almost impossible, but the Democratic Party as a whole, you're going to have to battle Marco Rubio, DeSantis, and Donald Trump next year. And if the party is interested in putting the money and resources into that state, then she could be competitive. But if they're not, she will lose because you cannot trust the electoral system in the state of Florida to actually represent what the people want as opposed to what the powers that be have tried to maintain.